Hi everyone, I'm here today to talk about difficult conversations and how we navigate our emotions in hard conversations. This was something that came up recently in an open processing session, and this was also a question that was sent to me, so it feels helpful to discuss it now. So sometimes many of us can experience overwhelming emotion in hard conversations and can feel like we just can't get our words out. We feel misunderstood. We may feel like we're drowning in our feelings. And it can lead to challenging conversations that just become more challenging. And oftentimes we feel like we don't have clarity in the moment because we are so clouded emotionally. So, the first thing that I want to explain here, and by the way, a lot of this is coming from my personal experience. The majority of this is actually coming from my personal experience. And I'm also going to be infusing human design knowledge and wisdom into this too. So, the first thing that is happening here is that what I've just explained, this experience of being in some kind of conversation where the emotions are overpowering and not being able to communicate in the way that you'd like is stereotypical, the stereotypical experience of someone who has an undefined solar plexus in their human design chart. So this experience is more common for those people. If you have the undefined solar plexus, so the solar plexus, the emotional center in your chart, if that's white, then this is more likely something that you have experienced versus someone who's emotionally defined, who has that center colored in. I recently heard it said by a human design teacher that the difference between emotionally defined people and emotionally undefined people is almost the same as the difference between men and women. So we experience emotions in very different ways. And people that have this undefined solar plexus experience emotions in typically a bigger and a more overwhelming way. From my perspective and my experience, I see far more people who experience emotions and have difficult emotionally charged conversations in this way versus people who are emotionally defined. People who are emotionally defined tend to be able to handle confrontation better. They tend to be able to speak what they're feeling and what they're thinking in a heightened state of emotion better than someone who is emotionally undefined. So right off the bat, there's an explanation. There is the mechanics of what you could be experiencing based on your human design chart. And what's really going on here is that the emotions are overpowering, as I've already said. And if we find ourselves in a conversation where we are trying to share what we're thinking and share what we're feeling, but we are so emotionally flooded that we can't get it out, oftentimes that leaves us feeling pretty frustrated. It leaves us feeling like we are not good, like we're incapable, like we're weak. And the truth is that for all of us, we need time to process our emotions. And for someone who is a non-emotional, someone who has the solar plexus undefined, and I can use myself as an example. This is me too, so I have lived experience here. I need to empty emotion to be able to communicate in a non-emotional way, to be able to access my thoughts. Because emotions are so powerful that they do flood the mind. And we can explain this in another way where we think of emotions as feminine. We think of emotions as the body, and we think of conversation and logic and reason and communication as masculine. So people that really are feeling something strongly in the moment are going to be very close to their emotional body. There's a presence there. There's a feminine energy in that emotion, right? The body is saying something through an emotion, and it's so powerful and it's so in the moment that we can't always access the mind and the logic and the masculine brain that can explain what we're feeling or that can communicate our point. So, like I was saying, everyone needs time to either release emotion or to let emotion subside. So, people who are emotionally undefined need to have some kind of way to release emotion. So let's say there is a challenging conversation that's being had. It's best to pause, find a way to empty that emotion out, and then return to the subject, the person, the conversation. So emptying emotion can look like dancing, crying, singing, taking a walk, putting your feet in the grass. Those are just some options, and it's going to be different for everyone. But finding a tool like that is going to be very helpful. And then we can return to the conversation and speak a little more clearly. You know, take time to let the emotion subside, and then you can see the thoughts. Because these emotions in our body are really saying something, and there is a truth there. There is some truth in that emotion. Maybe it's that maybe it's that the truth is from the past, because emotions are conditioned, programmed, and remembered by the body. So maybe this is some kind of emotion that was developed in childhood. That could be the truth. Or maybe it's that something external needs fixed. Or maybe it's something maybe the truth is that something internal needs fixed. So there can be many truths to what you're experiencing, but it's important to not judge that emotion. If you are having a challenging conversation with someone and you're feeling overwhelming emotion, it can be really helpful to tell yourself in that moment, to speak to yourself, tell yourself something soothing along the lines of, this emotion will pass. This emotion is okay. What I'm feeling is not wrong. I am upset, and that's okay. And then we can breathe. It's really helpful to take deep breaths and then say something to that effect to the other person. We can say to the other person, I'm really upset right now, and I just feel really flooded with anger, or I feel flooded with sadness. And I'm not sure what's going on yet, and I'm not really sure how to talk right now. So, can I have some time? Or just state, I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to pause, and can we talk again tomorrow? That kind of strategy can be really empowering to you, and it can train other people in that other people need to give time and grace to people who are experiencing overwhelming emotion, right? It can wait. We can figure this out another time. I can share my truth with you another time. This doesn't have to be sorted out right now. So that's an important lesson for them, to give you the space to be patient, that sort of thing. And it really does give you the time to be able to release emotion, and then you can start to look at what might be going on, or not. You know, sometimes when we do take that time to release emotion and we try to figure out what that emotion meant, we can cause trouble for ourselves, and that we're trying to come up with reasons for what we're feeling, and that can get tricky. Really, we can create problems for ourselves in doing that. So we have to be careful. But when we release emotion, clarity can come in. Whether you're emotionally defined or not, we calm down, and then clarity can come in. So we do have to practice things like this as people who are non-emotional. And other things that can get in the way of being able to speak your truth in a challenging conversation or in an emotional conversation, those things can be like the undefined throat, um, or being a projector, um, being a reflector. That's the undefined throat as well. But those sorts of things can, those sorts of types, those human design types, can lend themselves to feeling ignored and feeling like we're not heard or misunderstood. And especially for a projector, it's very easy for you to see the other person and to see what's going on, but not to be able to see yourself. And if you're emotionally undefined, it's very hard to be clear on what you're feeling. And the emotions are so loud that they really are drowning out what your mind might have to say. So I have found in my personal experience that over time, practicing this sort of thing has enabled me to have challenging emotional conversations. This is something that I was not capable of doing before. Anytime I was confronted, anytime there was kind of some kind of challenging conversation, I would get so angry that I would cry. I wouldn't be able to utter a word. I would just absolutely shut down and not be able to defend myself or my point or my truth. And that's because emotions are really extra challenging as someone who's a non-emotional. And we learn to just kind of make everyone happy. We learn to not speak up for ourselves, to not speak our truth. And over time, we have to learn how to do this. We basically have to be our own parent in this situation. So little by little, these sorts of things can really equip us and empower us to be able to have challenging conversations, to, in the moment, to be able to say kind and true things to ourselves, those soothing things like, this is okay, this emotion is all right, I don't have to try to get rid of this. I also don't have to try to speak my truth right now. I can give myself time, take some deep breaths, and in the moment, say whatever you can to allow yourself some time. Just say, hey, can we pause? I'm really emotional right now and I want to talk about this. I want to be able to share what I'm feeling, but I don't have access to it right now because I'm so overwhelmed with this. And then break away, pause, distance yourself from the challenging conversation, and then you can find clarity after that emotion is released, after it's processed, and then you can revisit the conversation. So I hope that's helpful. I know this is something that can be very, very challenging in relationships, but again, I'll speak from experience here and say that it gets easier. It becomes manageable. This really is something you can do. Emotion can feel so terrifying and it can feel so overwhelming, but you are not going to die. You are not going to die. The emotion is not going to kill you. That other person may have their own issues, and you empowering yourself to be able to engage like this can be so empowering for them. You can teach them so much in the way that you are engaging with your emotions as well. Because oftentimes people that are emotionally defined, because they're not as afraid of emotion, because emotions are not quite as intense and they're experienced in a different, more consistent way, they may not have the wisdom that you might to know to release the emotion before having a difficult conversation. It's so important that we communicate from a grounded place, that we communicate from a secure place. And when we are in a heightened state emotionally, we are not in a secure, grounded state. So I hope that's helpful. So this is the kind of guidance and the kind of help that I can offer in human design readings and open processing sessions and in coaching. I would encourage you right now to go look at your human design chart and to see if you're emotionally defined or not. And if there are situations like this in your life that are coming up, I would encourage you to consider open processing or coaching or just a reading, to check those sorts of things out on my website. And I want to say thank you for sending me this question. And I hope this helps, and I'll talk with you soon.